Buddy Jason Wood here from the Fitness Network. That's right, we are starting a brand new fitness network. I am so just overwhelmed with how awesome and how big of this project is going to be. I have with here the lovely Coach Charis, the first person I thought of. Charis, how you doing today?
I'm great, thanks.
Excellent, excellent. Charis is a kettlebell instructor, a Pilates instructor, and also the owner of Lux Fitness. Lux Strength in Denver, which is a kettlebell, Pilates, functional training kind of place, correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And what kind of training do you guys do there? What kind of tickles you when you go to work?
Well, we specialize in all sorts of strength training. So like you said, kettlebells, Pilates, which is a form of strength training, and even barbell work like powerlifting. But our whole thing is moving well, doing quality movements, and then reaping all of the benefits people are looking for. You get to like eat more, you look better, you feel better, you move better.
Yeah.
It's like, it really is that simple, and it's a bummer that people don't know that.
Yeah, yeah. I think you said simple is really great, because I think especially now with the New Year's and social media, people think it has to be this real hard, complicated thing, and we just know if you know how to do it right, only a couple drills really kind of make the difference, make it easy for people and stuff like that. So how'd you get into fitness, by the way? I don't think I know.
Well, I, like a lot of women, didn't like my body all throughout my adolescence, and then when I was in college, I discovered distance running, which made me skinny, and then dieting, which made me super skinny, and I trashed my body, and in my 20s I was injured, pretty grouchy, bloated, you know, it's a trap a lot of women fall into, and I just was very fortunate enough to be able to pull myself out of that by discovering strength training. I discovered Pilates at 17 years old, which is why I think I'm still alive at this point. And I really want to teach everyone, not just women, but men and women, how to do it properly. And it's amazing what your body can do if you just take the time to learn what it needs and then do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, kind of like what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And it's funny, is I read a quote from Bradley Cooper, the actor, and he was on set of the film of Wedding Crashers with Vince Vaughn, and he said he learned so much about acting because Vince Vaughn was afraid to fail. And I think so many people in the fitness industry, they're so afraid to fail, or they're so afraid to just start. And I think that's really where people like you, people like myself, and everyone else, you know, the good ones out there, know that this stuff does take time, and it is going to be kind of a trial and error. And that's kind of what the purpose of this whole kind of, we'll call it a network for lack of a better word, really is about just getting like-minded people, professionals like yourself, who can come in, maybe show people how to do things the right way, the proper way, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, and what would you say before we kind of get moving? Do you have, like, I have an island exercise, which means if I was on an island, I would want a kettlebell that I can maybe do some kettlebell swings with, some Turkish get-ups or whatever, and then Z Health, which is another kind of company I used to work for, some of their foot and mobility drills, I think, would be my two island exercises. So if you were stuck on an island with two things, what would it be?
Well, definitely a kettlebell.
For sure.
But I have to choose two.
Two.
Get up, which is kind of a cop-out because there's a lot of different things you can get from the get up.
Well, that'd be an exercise. I need two pieces of two things. What?
Oh, two things.
So a kettlebell, and what would be something else?
Okay, cool. Kettlebell for sure. You know what? Another kettlebell.
Two kettlebells.
Two different sizes.
Okay, yeah, maybe a mat. I don't know if a mat. Maybe the sand.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Don't
We digress. All right. So, what do you got going on here? I think the floor is going to be yours to go over some exercise stuff.
I'm going to show people how to break down the two most basic movements that are really the deadlift and the squat, but it's the hip hinge and the squat, which really confuse people with all different kinds of tools. I think it's easiest to learn with a kettlebell, learning the difference between them, but also I'm going to show you how to warm up so that you just don't start swinging around a ball of iron.
Yeah,
you know, it's like the first thing you're doing.
Yeah. And do you do better by yourself? Do you want me to come here and do stuff wrong? Are you kind of good? Good by yourself?
I'm good. I mean, it'd be funny to make you do stuff, but
maybe I'll come in at the end.
Okay.
Maybe I'll come in at the end. All right, Charis, I'm going to get out of here. Okay. I'll let you take over. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.
All right. All right, so I have three pieces of equipment here, or tools. Kettlebell, which we've already talked about. I have a short foam roller. My preference is actually a longer foam roller. I love this brand, but they don't make long enough ones. So you can get one, super cheap that's the full length ones, and you can do so many more things with it if you have that one. But this is what we got, so that's what we were using. I'm also using these mobility balls or Therapy Plus balls. I like the brand, the Role Model or Yoga Tune-Up, or no, it was formerly Yoga Tune-Up. The inventor calls herself a recovering yogi. So, but I really like the texture, the size. There's a couple different sizes. And the most important thing, why I'm bringing it up, is that people tend to use really aggressive tools like lacrosse balls and just dig into these like very sensitive areas and think that everything's going to be okay. But I don't like that. So these are the ones I like. A tennis ball will work in a pinch as well. So for warm-up, I always like to do some kind of tissue work, like foam rolling or using balls, or like there's like a lot of different things that you can use. Also, be sure to keep your space clear. As I tell my clients all the time, the dumbest way to hurt yourself is just like tripping over something that you were too lazy to move. Okay, so we're gonna start by using this foam roller on your quads. Quads are the muscles along the front of your leg, and they are generally pretty tight in everybody. So you wanna place the roller mid-quad, and really important, you have to remember that this is a plank and you're not just like chilling here. First of all, this makes it less pressure in the quad, so it's a cop-out, but also what's the point of doing it if you're gonna hurt your back? So everybody has to kind of figure out what the best position is for them, and be patient with yourself, because if you don't foam roll or do a lot of these types of movements, you're going to be more fatigued. And it doesn't mean you're a failure, it just means that you need to do this more. So what an opportunity to do that. So you can see I'm pivoting from my shoulder. So I'm going all the way up to the crease of the hip and the hip flexors, and then down to the top of the kneecap. You don't want to use the muscle that you're trying to roll, because this should be passive, right? Also, this looks pretty stupid. And you see my legs are pretty relaxed. So from there, I usually do my glutes or upper butt and lower back. And I usually just tilt like this. You'll see some fancier ways to do this. It's not necessary. And especially when you're off to the side, you can go up your lower back just a little bit. You'll know when you hit your kidneys. See what I mean? Like if you had a longer foam roller, you could just switch to the other side. And then I'm going to place it at the bottom of my rib cage and cradle my head. So I think a lot of times people learn in kind of general fitness classes that you shouldn't be touching your head because they don't want you to push on your neck. That's valid, but we actually want to create like a basket to support your head. So my fingers are interlocked and I'm like supporting my head versus pushing on it. That is a big difference. And my spine is rounded, which is going to protect my back. You can do this with a flat back. Don't let that freak you out. But, stretching the muscles wide will make this feel better. So I'm just pivoting, basically doing like a hamstring curl, right, to get my upper back. This one usually feels pretty good too. And then from there, I get the calves. I need a pedicure, so I'm not going to do my feet with these, but normally feet would get it too. I'm just going to show you how I use these on my calves. So I start towards the ankle, like the Achilles, and because of the balls, there's two of them, right? You might know that like with the calf muscle, there's two parts to it. So I really like how you can get in between the muscles and kind of like gently push them apart. And speaking of push, none of this is supposed to be like, 1 rep max kind of force on these things. It's supposed to be passive. So, even if it feels good to shove your body down onto these things, it's really counterproductive. So you see I'm going all the way around. And again, this position, especially with this like a reverse plank, if you're not used to doing those, you're going to fatigue more and faster. So, don't be a hero and break it up. And make sure that you're using your other leg to help support you. So I try to like twist as I go so that it's moving the, this sounds gross, flesh to get like the deeper muscles and all the way around. Cool. So then we're gonna do a little core mobility type thing, warm up. Like I said, you don't wanna just start swinging a weight around. If you're short on time, at least do some planks and things like that, like glute bridges, which are gonna be involved in this. But especially if you're just getting started, you know, take your time. It's the minimum required dose. Like, you know, you don't need to run a marathon when you're just getting started to prove how hardcore you are. It's, you know, if you can't walk for a week because of how sore you are, that's really counterproductive. So start at the beginning. Okay, so my hands are flat, toes are curled under. Yes, it sucks for everybody, but it does get better. Your toes are just tight and weak. And then you're gonna make sure that you're pulling your abs up and in. Now it might feel like you're doing this, that's how it feels for me, but that's because what's normal or what you're used to is more like this, right? I know that does look better out the gates, but now we're just gonna pivot back and forth on the toes, on the hands, and on the knees. So just back and forth. This is a great warm up for the wrists as well. And then circle. People will often say things like their wrists are weak as a reason to not do a certain movement. I mean, don't, you know, try to do 100 push-ups. Now I'm circling my body. I was on the push-up rant. But you need to get stronger wrists, right? And just like everything else, you got to meet your body where it's at. Okay, so then we're going to do a cat-cow-ish on the forearms. And we're going to do the forearms because people tend to do, you know how your upper back is like this? For most people it is. So people tend to do this way too much in this movement. I don't know which one is cat and cow. I got to be real with you. I'm not a fan of yoga anyway. And then they tend to like stick their butts out with the other one, whatever that is. So it's really counterproductive because, well, if you're already like this a lot and you're already like this a lot, what are you doing, right? So if you go onto your forearms, it will allow you to lift your upper back, right? So we want to like counter the position we're stuck in, and then round the lower back. And also just like dropping your head is a really nice way to just let gravity stretch your poor neck. So often limiting the range of motion, even though it might feel like you're not doing much, it's because you're not compensating, which is a pretty cool concept if you ask me. I just really want to be able to like pick up my own groceries when I'm older. Also, getting off the toilet. That's like the nightmare one, right? That's usually gets people to pay attention to me because we don't want any help in there as long as we can manage it. Okay, so I might regret this, but we're gonna use the foam roller for a plank. And this is challenging. I don't want to use this foam roller either because it doesn't have any give. That's great because it lasts forever. This is literally about 12 years old. But for this particular exercise, I wish I had something more stable and wider, but we're persevering. And you can always modify, obviously, on the floor. Why I like the foam roller is because for the plank, people do this a lot, or they do this a lot, like in their shoulders. And where we want to be is like elbows directly under your shoulders and your forearms horizontal and parallel to one another, parallel to the floor and each other. So think about, instead of just pushing your forearms out, like you're trying to pull your elbows together. Do you see how that affected my upper back? Man, do not want to do this. But we got to do it. So here, that's where we pull the abs in again, right? And I'm trying not to push my shoulders. This is just going to stay put. I'm going to tuck a little bit because that's, You might have been told not to do that. Please ignore that. All right, so I'm just gonna come up onto all fours. So I'm just gonna lift my knees up, which is gonna make this worse. And I'm probably not gonna be able to talk, so stay with me. So my knees are hovered like right above the floor. My weight's in my heels and my fists. If your planks don't look like that, they're not really planks. The way you want to think about core exercises that are getting those really deep stabilizers is it should suck a lot. Like you should want to get in and out. And if you can talk through it and kind of like, you know, think about lunch, then that's not, yeah, no. Those deep muscles can be hard to get to, and it takes a little, like Jason said, trial and error. But, you know, sometimes you just got to do some work. Okay, let's move on to the kettlebell. Follow my own advice and not pick that up stupidly. So yeah, the 10 seconds I did that plank, that was more than adequate because I thought I was going to explode. Okay, so this kettlebell is 25 pounds, sorry. Usually we like kilo because we're snobby, I don't know. But this is the one I have. So this is a 25 pound or about 12 kilo bell, which is pretty light for what we're gonna initially use it for. But I also wanna stress that the better you can make the light weights look, the better your form is. That being said, using a heavier weight, I'm just gonna get this out of the way. It's like a death trap. Okay. Foam roller too?
Foam roller up. Do you need it?
I think so.
Oh, there you go. Whatever. Take two.
Okay.
You're good.
Actually, no, I'm not. It's death trap. Okay. Okay, so kettlebell, you have this top part is the handle and the sides are the horns. Very much appropriate. And what you need to remember is that unlike a barbell, you want to work with the kettlebell, and that can actually be what's so intimidating about it. With a barbell, you're really trying to dominate that weight, get it as close to your body, wedged against your body as much as possible, and not let it pull you one way or another. So powerlifting is actually all about being stable, ironically, and it's so hard to be still. That's the hardest thing to do. And that's honestly why people really struggle, especially with the deadlift. So the deadlift is the hip hinge, like I said, and it's pretty much the foundational movement of everything in hard style kettlebell, which is the style of kettlebell that I do. So a hip hinge is just deep hip flexion. And usually people look at that and think, how hard can that be? You would be amazed of just not a person's inability to follow directions, but just how such a simple thing can be so difficult to learn. And it's because we're just not used to doing that. The body likes the path of least resistance, which is awesome. You don't have to like look at your feet all day when you're walking and stuff. But to break bad habits or learn new ones, it can be a little tedious sometimes. So with a kettlebell, what I like about it is like learning the hip hinge with the kettlebell is that it's lighter than a barbell. Just a barbell without weights alone is 45 pounds. And you can learn how to let it float. So these types of movements are ballistics, which like a bullet, right? There's like power and float. Another good way to think about that is like sprinters, right? If you have too much tension, you know, you're not going to be very fast. And if you're running like this, you're not going to be very fast, right? Or like a punch is kind of similar, right? There's that strike and then the float. And that will help you look less ridiculous when you learn this, but you got to just accept that you're probably going to look pretty ridiculous. So with the deadlift, hip hinge, all that stuff, if this were a barbell, that would be where this handle is. So I have it just forward of my shins. So with a hip hinge, you see that my knees aren't moving forward or back. If I am coming this way and I start bending from the waist, you can see my hips aren't moving anymore. The thing that's moving now, or where I'm moving from, is my lower back. If I start hinging and then doing this, my hips are moving down now, right? They are not moving straight back. And that is what a squat is. There's more leg involvement. That's where everyone gets mixed up. And that's why we're going over the hip hinge and the squat. And I'll show you a terrible little complex that will make it easy for you to learn. And also probably make you sweat a bit. So bell is in between the arches of my feet, the forefoot, whatever, and this handle just forward of my shins. It seems ridiculous, but master level expert kettlebell instructors, many of them will still push their hips back. And it's because we just really are resistant to learning new things, even decades later. So by pushing your hips back, it's a good way for you to prime your body and make sure that your hips are moving in that direction. Commonly what happens is people go, oh, because they're gonna fall backwards. I would suggest putting your toes down. What a concept. But it's not your fault. It's because everyone's running around with like super squishy running shoes, right? Which is fine for running or whatever. But when you are trying to lift weights, if you're wearing this like, you know, rocking horse kind of thing, and you're trying to sit back, what's gonna happen? You're not gonna be able to push through your toes, right? So I usually go barefoot, like I kind of said, but zero drop shoes. These are Vivo Barefoot. That's just the company that I really like. I think they look the best too. But zero drop, anything like that where you can actually push through your toe, the ball of the foot. And this is not impact, right? So this is a great place to start getting your feet stronger. Okay, so that being said, if you've been running around in not zero drop shoes, you'll be amazed at how hard it is for you to just get your feet to cooperate with you. They have a mind of their own. Thanks, feet, but we're changing things. So make sure that you're constantly pushing into the ball of the foot or the big toe. I don't say just big toe because people will still do weird stuff. Okay, so then I'm gonna push my hips back and my arms, right? The dead part is my arms just hanging here, right? So not like this or other weird stuff. Again, very difficult to get your arms to obey you because they're like, who are you? We've been doing it without you forever. We don't need your help. Just preparing you for how frustrating it can be. So you'll grab the handle with both hands and you'll see that when I come down here, my shoulders are just forward of this handle and just forward of my knees. So now I'm going to imagine I'm breaking the handle. Same thing as the plank when I said to squeeze the elbows together or think about driving them together. Same thing. It's all the same thing. So then I will drop my butt without falling backwards because I'm using my toes. And now you see that my shoulders are right over the handle. It's a workout too because you're down here forever, but that's good. It's all built in. So when you get to this position, you see that my knees and elbows are aligned with each other, right? If my knees were here, I'd be squatting. If my knees were here, I'd be bending from my back, right? So obviously you're not gonna like retain all of this in one go. But the really nice thing about kettlebell training and the way that hardstyle kettlebell or RKC kettlebell instructors are trained is they have tons of ways for you to troubleshoot this stuff on your own. It just takes practice. You have to remember that weightlifting isn't something you just like come in off the street and, you know, throwing around barbells. I mean, you can, I don't recommend it. You have to think of it more like, you know, if it was your first day in jujitsu or something, you know, you'd feel pretty clumsy, but you'd acknowledge that you have to put in some time to get better at it. Weightlifting is no different. And it's worth it, guys. My God. Okay, so hold the handle, sit back. And again, don't be surprised at how difficult just this part will be. Just be patient with yourself. Other thing, again, it's all the same thing, is making sure to keep this pulled up. So when people go to engage their lats, they'll often stick their butt out just like that plank, right? So again, you're gonna feel like you're doing this because we're so used to being like this. It's a good look too. So I, after 25 some years of lifting, still have to tell myself, don't spill the bucket. So just as like silly as something like this, for some reason, I have to fight my body every single time and say, don't spill the bucket. The bucket being my pelvis. So I'm trying not to let it spill forward like that. So imagining it's like, you know, use your head, right? Like visualization. And just by doing that, by thinking about not letting this spill forward, it helps keep me out of my lower back. Oh. I'm gonna come back in. Okay, good, that's actually perfect. Moving right along. Okay, so the deadlift itself is literally just standing up. The problem, right, that people have with it and why they're so afraid of it is because they don't do the setup to stand up with it. So you have to be able to know where your body is in space and create the tension to stand up safely with a deadlift. You know, with like a squat, you already have the weight on you. It's like a two-part movement. With the deadlift, you're flapping in the breeze. So a really great way to teach the hip hinge is with the two-handed dead clean, which is a mouthful. But a clean is basically an explosive hip hinge that can be an exercise on its own or an exercise to get the weight up to you. So a clean with a barbell is up here. Single arm clean is what's most commonly seen in kettlebells, like this one, right? So this can be an exercise, or if I'm gonna press or squat or something, right? And then don't forget, it's a two-part movement like that. So with the two-handed clean, I know that looked fancy, but just in case that was something you recognized, with the two-handed clean, you're doing the exact same thing as the deadlift, except you're bringing it up here. Now, everybody has this vision of them hitting themselves in the face with this bell. I haven't seen it yet, but, you know, just be careful. But you see, you will figure it out without having to overthink it, because all you know is that you need to get this bell up here, right? And the other thing is that since it's a dead clean, this thing is coming towards you, so you are going to reflexively brace against it so that you're not going to do something like this, because that probably won't end well. This is usually, like I said, this is a pretty light bell, but it's illustrating it. So notice too that every time I come back down at the same speed that I went up. So you don't want to like catch it here and then bring it down. Also, I keep it hovered, so I'm just ready to go into the next rep. If you have to start all the way from scratch, you know, first of all, it's going to take an eternity, but secondly, you're not capitalizing off all that tension that you just built. Okay, so once you do the two-handed clean, right, see how my shins have not really moved? Then from there, I'm just going to turn my toes out a little bit, and with the bell in this position, I'm going to squat. So now you see my knees are forward, right, and very much bent. And I'm just holding it. People get weird when I'm holding it like a purse. I mean, it's normal, I get it. But you really want to imagine that you're holding the bell with open hands, because what you're really holding it from, set it down safely, the same thing that I said on the foam roller, right? Pulling the elbows together. So you do that here, that same feeling of like squeezing, not just your armpit, but like down into your ribs. And those are the same muscles, your lats, that are holding the bell, not your poor arms. Just like with the deadlift, your arms aren't going to get you very far. It has to be your lats, which are massive muscles. See how my elbows arrive. It's hard to talk to in goblet squat. Elbows just to the inside of my knee. But I want you to see as well, if you can like follow a line here, I want you to see that the bell stays in this same line throughout. So clean, squat, right? It's just straight up and down. we're not even going to get into breathing because that's a lecture you're not ready for. You already got the foot one. But it is helpful to remember to breathe and then set it down safely. I feel like I had something else. Oh yes, so clean, just like a deadlift. Your feet are parallel and pointed relatively forward. Keep going.
Wind it up.
Okay. This will be the last thing. So it's kind of a narrow foot position, right? So you can sit your hips back. Believe it or not, that'll make it easier. Even if all you're doing is getting ready to do a squat, don't get in your squat position when you need to do a clean. You still need to treat it like a clean, right? So toes forward, toes out, then squat, however many, then toes forward again, and then down. People don't treat the clean like its own thing. You gotta finish the clean. Don't just, flop down. I love to talk, especially about myself.
Charis, I got to say, I'm sorry to cut you off so early. That was incredible.
No, I'm gassed.
Great job on that. I could tell we were watching in the back. Wow, excellent work. Again, that hinge, what a primitive, classic movement. A lot of people, round, stuff like that. Now, a couple quick questions kind of came up. We were talking in the back. If somebody has an issue, let's say I'm doing I'm trying to do this hinge motion and I just don't have the flexibility. Do I have to go down all the way or can I stop maybe mid-shin or mid-thigh to change that range?
That's a great question. Actually, one of my virtual clients during lockdown, all he had was a 15-pound kettlebell, which was teeny tiny, and a bunch of Oxford dictionaries, because he's a smarty pants. And so we used his Oxford dictionaries to stack to where he could reach, right, and not have to compromise his form or feel smushed, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's the thing. The great thing about kettlebells is they're so scalable, and I think you did a great job demonstrating that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. What size, people watching this, if they don't really know anything about kettlebells, what size do you recommend someone starts with, or what's the question was, what's the lightest kettlebell? And I said, well, if you talk to you and I, we're going to say an 18, or, even that might even be debatable.
Yeah.
What do you think is a good starting weight for people?
Well, that's also a great question because the way that I have been using kettlebells is a little different from RKC in that I'm really having people utilize very light bells to do things like, half get-ups, and we didn't even get into the get-up, but it's a lot of time under tension and teaches people how to have this alignment. My point with that is that it doesn't matter how light you start, you're always going to be able to use that bell.
Right.
That being said, I think the 12 kilo, 25 pounds is pretty good, especially for, well, it's just so hard to answer that question, right?
I agree.
So if you're more petite and older, then probably 25 pounds or 12 kilo.
Yeah.
And I think for guys like bigger, like 20 kilos, it just totally depends.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've smoked people with lightweight, heavyweight. One thing I loved you said in the beginning is that you always want to make your lightweights seem heavy or your heavyweights seem lighter. I forget exactly how you phrased it, but
you want your lightweights to look just as clean as like the left.
Yeah. We should be able to walk in and not know, especially on something like a higher rep ballistic exercise like a swing, we should be able to walk in and not know what rep you're on. You shouldn't be gassed. You shouldn't be getting kind of sloppy like that, And then also I love that you pointed out what the kettlebell actually looks like because not all kettlebells are created equal, surprisingly.
That's true.
I know the ones at Target tend to not be the best. I think getting them online is better, especially if you can find one that's a full mold versus has a little seam in the middle. So I would maybe suggest not running out and buying a kettlebell right away. Maybe they could reach out or something to you, which brings us to how they can find out about you, Charis.
Well, I'm on Instagram at coach.charis. That's CHARIS. Write it down because you're not going to remember it. And my website is luxstrengthdenver.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll definitely have to do this again. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, I guess reach out to her, and we'll see you next episode of the Fitness Network, which I don't know if they have episodes or we'll do something fun. I don't know.
Beauty and the Beast.
We'll figure this out. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, you sent me